Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 7th, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating, and also present is Ralph Kohler. We've been discussing this issue. It is 3370326, refine field descriptions. And, oh, sorry, I skipped a step. Um, It'll give me a minute to get my usual Drupal site up and running. While that chugs along, we have a spreadsheet we've been working on where we are discussing proposed interface text. And I think we had gotten down to the very contentious media and file upload. Um, and I think I'm now ready. With the site, I will paste that into the Zoom chat. Thomas, I see you've joined us. Thomas Howell. And just for the sake of the recording, I'm giving the context of the issue we're working on. If you go to content types, manage fields for any content type, create a new field. These are the groups, and in some cases, specific field types. Let's see what's coming up next. I guess we still have to discuss file upload. So it is specifically the text, or mostly the text on this screen that we've been discussing. So I guess last week we discussed possibly changing these labels instead of media and file upload. I think one suggestion was using media assets here and reusable media there. But I think we ended up deciding that none of those changes were real improvements, and they also led to inconsistency. That media is referred to as media in various places, such as admin content. Is that worth revisiting, or shall we go on to the text on the next screen?
I guess better to go to file and image the descriptions for those, because otherwise we are stuck again for a while.
Okay. Just wanted to give a chance if people had second or third thoughts in the week since, um, any new ideas. But if not, yes, let's go on to this. So I think for now we're going to leave this long text at the bottom alone. And so we want to distinguish between what a file field is used for and what an image field is used for. And the current text for uploading files can be configured with options such as allowed file extensions and maximum upload size. Images for uploading images allows user to upload an image with configurable extensions, image dimensions, upload size. Can be configured with options such as allowed file extensions, maximum upload size, and image dimensions, minimums, maximums. So if the purpose of these lists is to distinguish between the two fields, there's a lot of commonality between the two. I think all of this text is exactly copied. Oh, can I not select in this form element? Um, and it seems to me that it also, these second and third points overlap quite a lot. Do you agree?
Yes.
And allows user to upload an image is sort of duplicating the first point for uploading images. Um, so here in the spreadsheet that Ralph has prepared, we have the existing text for file, the existing text for image. Um, and Ralph, do you want to say anything about the suggestions you made in this column?
Yeah, but my raised hand was about 1 point before that. Um, I just wanted to make a remark that aside the point shaping out the difference between file and image in the descriptions, it would be also important to shape out the difference between the third one, the media, even though it's not on the same page or step in this case, but still at least the point that is not really that files and images are not reusable in a way like media might be an important point to make from my perspective in on that page, even though media is not listed.
Right. Well, that's the point of this text down here. Um,
Yeah, but the point also is who is reading the text down there. If you are focused on which field type to pick, then you rather gloss over or even ignore the description underneath,
yeah,
at least to myself.
I agree with you, but I'm afraid of getting into that because I don't think there's a good solution, and I don't want to spend another hour discussing that. I'd like to make progress on the text that's easier to handle. Thomas?
I I I definitely hear what Ralph is saying, and agree with it um, theoretically. But I also agree with what you're saying that in my mind it's a trap. I think this entire set of three fields is very, very difficult to address, and last week exemplified that. Um, I think that my approach would be if these are differentiating from one another, anything that is a commonality, I would pull above or below out of these boxes and only have contrasting points. So for uploading images versus for uploading files, that's contrasting. Now, then I would probably talk about whether or not is there really value in that? Like this is already called something for uploading. So that would be the way I'd approach it. I would, if there's 3 points on the left, have 3 points on the right, and that's where I would start. And so there's only really 2 points on each side, so I would start with that, and then I'd ask myself, are there any additional differences that have not been added here that would help illustrate the point? But I definitely would pull out the can be configured for options. Like that's the same exact sentence, and having it in both things doesn't tell you why you would pick one or the other. So I would pull it out and keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I think in general it's a good idea to have the same number of points in each one, but I wouldn't want to follow that too strictly. There might be cases where uh, where we would want one point and one that's not in the other. Ralph?
Yeah, I agree. What Thomas said, and as well what you said, I wouldn't strictly stick to the point of having the exact number of bullet points on each of those field types. That isn't necessary from my perspective. But one question in regards to file and images is also what's the difference? Because strictly speaking, if you're asking a naive question, an image is also a file.
Yes.
And or in particular from a perspective of a non-technical user even, then it might be confusing potentially. But yeah, in general, I agree with the approach Thomas said, simply to remove everything that is overlapping and yeah, leave the media point out for now.
Right. So, um, so getting technical for a moment, not saying that this is going to go into the interface text, but a few differences are um, one, the image file provides width and height, um, and maybe also alt text in the database. So there are a few extra columns in in the database table for image files. From a user's point of view, I think the more significant distinction is that images are meant to be displayed on the site. So if you want people just to be able to download the image as a file, you could put it in a file field. But if you want to display it on the site, and if you want to generate image derivatives from it, then you need to make it an image field. Thomas?
That was exactly the information that I was looking for. And I'm wondering, could we try and edit these a little bit in page, like doing the element editing so that we can try and make them look, and I don't know if that's if you prefer going back to the spreadsheet to do that because it's more durable, but it would help me to see in context these points. But exactly what you said is what I'm looking for. Essentially, what motivates someone to pick file rather than image, and including in file that you can put images here, but we recommend using image field because of the other features. Like, and maybe that's too wordy, but otherwise, this is just crazy confusing to me as a user, and I get stuck in what I think of as a kind of loop where I would go through and read this and try and figure out what the difference is, and then I go back to the last the prior page, and then I'd go and like, what's the difference between these different choices, and having explicit instructions and making them like lots of sentences isn't helpful. So if we can figure out way like an example is can be configured with options such like obviously if it can be configured, that is an option. So why wouldn't we say configurable file extensions and maximum upload size? So moving away from lots and lots of text in these boxes to short differentiable bullet points would help me, I believe, and I'd like to see what that looks like.
Okay. Ralph suggests working in the spreadsheet and then copying it over. So let's try it that way.
Sure.
Um, so what shall we start with? Do we even need to say for uploading files, or is that just repeating what's already in the label?
I think it's repeating what's out in the label, and if you really wanted to keep it, I would change the label on that page to uploading files and uploading images, if that was if uploading is a necessary term.
Um, so let's just leave that out for now. And what is the most important thing to say about files? Should we give examples of files that are commonly used, file types?
I like the point that you just mentioned before, where you were really describing. Like the first thing I'd start with was Essentially, this is for putting images into pages. And you didn't say reusable, but if it is I guess that would be a second bullet point. But this is for putting images into pages, where this is putting files which may be images for download from pages, and then something that truly is a strong point of differentiation between the two in
Okay.
way of explanation.
Or
The point was with images for display in the front end while files are for download. That was, I guess, the gist Benjamin raised before.
something like this. It's the download. And I think, Thomas, you were originally suggesting that we sort of put both parts of that in here under the file description. Can be used for images to be downloaded, but not for things that are going to be displayed on the site. I'd rather separate, put the second part over here.
It's whatever you like. Like the key point is really instructing people on why you want to pick one over the other, and I think this is a start towards that.
Okay, and I left one above it empty, and um, I think more common use cases could be listed here. Um, files such as PDF, um, spreadsheets, um, binaries, zip files,
Um,
or should we just say any file type?
I I like what you're doing because any doesn't convey information. I would add any in some way at the end, but what you're doing makes sense.
Okay. It's like when you ask a child, what was your favorite part about summer camp? And they say, oh, everything. Content-free answer. Go ahead, Ralph.
Um, One nitpick in the context of the bullet point on image is meant to be displayed on the site. Do you want to imply that just in the front end or also in the back end? Because there's the example of if you have a dam and that is only for managing images and that are not necessarily displayed on the site directly. So would it make sense to either strike the on the site or simply images meant to be displayed, or elaborate more and distinguish about the concept of site, meaning in the front and in the back end, something like that? Or is it too detailed?
I think it might be too detailed. I also think that the site builder has the option to display images, thumbnails on the back end or the front end, or typically both. Um, if you were to use Drupal as a DAM, then the front end conceivably would only have descriptions and not display the images, but the back end might have thumbnails so that the people managing the dam could describe the images they're uploading. Um, so yeah, whether it's the front end or the back end is up to the site builder. So I don't think we need to say anything about that.
Hmm. Go ahead, Thomas, first. I'm still thinking.
Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
Sorry, I'm trying to go back and forth. I cheated a little here, and I'm not a big fan of using AI for these things, but um, what I wanted to do was just see what how things tend to get grouped language-wise, and it came up with categories that I think make sense to me, but I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it for our situation. But basically, it broke it down into groups and subgroups of like starting with documents, media, software, and other, which makes sense because when they have the subgroups, when you look at media, that includes images, audio, and video, and that um, I think that if we're discussing in the media. So one of the, and I'm not going there, but I'm just saying like one of the challenges why we keep on getting stuck into a loop is because media is one level up, but media does not appear here, and images is a subset of media. It creates some confusion because I'm like, well, why do we have images and not video? Because if I can look at an image in a page, I can look at a video in a page. And I know we're not going there. So what I'm suggesting, I want to be really clear, not trying to solve that problem, but what it means is what's extraneous is trying to demonstrate that when we talk about download, we're talking about downloading things like various document types, which are PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, stuff like give people like, and we can say PDFs, documents, spreadsheets, presentations. We don't have to have the Microsoft stuff in there. Um, but that's what I would do is like I'd have a bullet point that says for downloading documents such as for downloading software such as executables, packages, disk images. And then we could say, or downloading things like fonts, ebooks, and then that way it gives really like that's very concrete stuff that if I saw that list, I'd be like, oh, if I put images here, it's just for downloading the image, and that's the question that I always get confused on. Is like even if I read the words download for looking for examples, and we give people those concrete categories with a couple of file types after it, like if we say documents and then we're like .pdf, .doc or .docx, .xlsx, like putting in the file types next to calling them documents keeps it short and concise, but really lets me know what those things are. So if someone doesn't know what the extension means, they do know what the word documents means.
Okay, so I replaced PDF with documents. Maybe that includes spreadsheets, so I could take out spreadsheets and put in something else. Ralph?
Um, I agree with Thomas said, and therefore I would also basically add things like audio, images, and video, which basically overlaps with media, but still it's in that context just about the files, not about the media concept that is spanning across it, above it. So, but still, I would add that aspect there as well, that you could also consider audio files, video files, and image files there, and with the examples like Thomas suggested.
If we add audio, should that go in this section or in this section along with images?
So I would say can be used for media downloads such as images, audio, and video.
So you want to emphasize the download, and Ralph, you agree with that? Should we make that the first bullet point? Files for download?
Yeah. And maybe even add that it's not reusable.
Um, again, the reusable is the third rail, the part that we're not going to touch.
And no, I just meant, but if we add the reusable aspect to media, I mean that adding the contrary to the field types on the other page, I thought it would make sense. That is the only thing. I don't want to go into detail there. That was my point I wanted to make. But we can leave it out. It's okay.
So let's say, how about downloadable files? If that's,
Mhm.
why is this not? There we go. Downloadable files. And then should I say such as documents,
Such as
or should that be a separate bullet point?
I, I in earlier instances we gave examples as separate lines, so we could start with the categories and call it something like downloadable files, such as um, documents, software, media, and other, or skip other software, media, uh, like documents, software, and media.
Yeah, so certainly with the number types, we leaned heavily on the examples line. Um, and maybe it is best for the first bullet point to be very short. And then we can have um, examples. And what's your list again?
Um, so if we want to go by the list, maybe we can start long and then try shortening, and that way it's
Okay.
there. I would say documents, and then in parentheses put PDF, um, uh, docx, dot xlsx, dot txt. That really is a lot. I don't think we should list every file type, but
No.
giving a few puts it in context.
Yeah, well, let's start off long and trim it down, as you
Okay.
suggested.
The next bullet point would be can can be media type, media downloads such as images, audio, and video.
Oh, so you want that in a separate?
Yeah, I would make it a separate bullet point, at least for right now. You guys
Okay.
might think of it easier.
So again, lead off with examples or,
Yeah, we can lead off with examples. I mean, it could be like a JPEG, MP3. I mean, just JPEG and MP3. I don't hear people using MP4 and AVI frequently in language, but people know what JPEG and MP3 are, whether or not they're into a lot of file types.
okay. Um,
But I would at least one file type for media for videos be added there. Because at the moment you have images and audio.
Then we can do AVI. Um,
MO, MOV.
Oh, yeah, MOV. That's great. That I'm trying to stick to things that are in common language.
Looking at this text here, I think the word meant to be displayed. I think we can just strike that word. Images to be displayed on the site. Um, Examples. Um, JPEG,
And WebP.
PNG, WebP. And
If.
is it GIF or GIF? Let's spend half an hour debating that.
Touche. Now, one question I have about images is, are they intended for download? Like, can they be displayed and downloaded from image? Um, I don't recall.
Um, sure, they can be downloaded, but you have to right click on it and save image as.
Right.
Um, Whereas, so it can be done, but it's not convenient. The main purpose of this image is that you can look at it.
This may be pedantic, but calling it out and saying that it's not intended for download, like that's not the explicit intention of the field, might help people really emphasize that.
I guess I really resist having the knots. I think putting it in one column or the other is implicitly saying that it's not meant for the one where you don't list it. But Ralph, what do you want to say?
Um, Two minor details. For one, um, would it make sense or be reasonable instead of downloadable files to say something like provide a download link compared to basically display it as an image in contrast to the image there? And the other detail would be unre sort of related but unrelated. Um, Underneath, we have images to be displayed on the site. And would it make sense to adjust the pattern up there instead of downloadable files to be downloaded, something like that?
Maybe. Thomas, do you have an opinion on that? You-
You could do the inverse and say they're display images or images for display.
Yeah, or the other way around. Yep.
I'd prefer shorter than longer.
So just shorten this to displayed images.
Yeah.
And that way it would be active also.
I'm really of the opinion that more bullet points and fewer sentences will make it easier to look at this page and immediately know what the choice is that you're being presented with.
So I'd like to suggest two changes. So one is that we have some form of the text here about what options can be configured. And the second is that I'd like to combine these two example lines and perhaps drop the words documents and media and just make it a list of file types. Go ahead.
My thinking there was that I would rather drop the file types than documents and media, and I'm trying to make certain that we are like the issue when I look at this is, and again, we could do it separate. We could have a list of file types, and it could be all of them. Because again, for media, the piece that is not readily apparent is, from the word media, is that it means images, that it means all of these different types. And I guess I'm trying to stay away from jargon for site builders who do not know file types. Um, and when they look at these two choices, the like I'm always getting stuck in the trap of, okay, so if we list the word images in both places, I still haven't solved the problem of why am I picking one over the other? And it isn't clear to me that just because we include the term downloadable, the other one isn't intended to be used for download. And that's why I keep on straying towards language that I think isn't working for the two of you. But the problem I'm trying to solve is when I look at these things, again, why are they different? A list of file types, well, I can list the same file types in both places because I can upload in both instances a .jpeg. So it isn't that what I want to avoid is if I just have a bullet point that has just .jpeg and I don't have .jpeg listed on the other, then I'm going to pick the upload file, even though that isn't why I really should. It is the thing I should be picking, and that's why I'm trapped. Like, I think the JPEG is specific. It's great. I like having it there, but the idea that these are images for download versus these are images to look at is the differentiator I'm trying to make certain we're putting, and just lists of file types doesn't achieve that for me unless it's the last bullet point says, hey, these are all the things you can use. And that's just like a text editor when we're working in the text editor and it says, okay, you can do these types of things. That's a standard behavior that I'm used to seeing. I don't know if I'm making sense. I apologize.
I'm afraid I'm not getting a concrete suggestion out of those ideas.
Well, the concrete suggestion is I don't think we should just have a list of file types in file upload and then in image. Like, I don't get, like, if I have examples JPEG and I have examples JPEG, um, JPG versus JPEG, a non-technical person will see that, and if they have a file type that is JPG, they're going to say, oh, I'm going to put it into files and not image, because the
Uh,
differentiator in their mind is the fact that it isn't available in both. And if I have JPEG,
Okay,
JPG
well,
in both,
well,
then
well,
yeah,
well, that's an easy change. We can make that not a differentiator.
right. Okay. And then what I'm saying is, like, then I get stuck because these need to be further down because we need more information as to what is the motivating factor. Why do I choose file versus image?
Okay. Ralph, what do you want to say?
Um, 2 points. I agree with your first point, Benji. Having just a single examples line or bullet point is desirable, not having two examples twice. But aside that, I'm in line with Thomas. Simply just just providing JPEG, MP3, AVI, MOV is way too abstract. But communicating the underlying basic concept that basically file is about documents, about media. Media consists of videos, audio, and then provide those and be explicit. It's not an entire list, but just examples. I consider essential. So for understanding
Okay.
and yeah.
Okay. So we're not going to have just a list of file extensions. So then the two choices are to have just a list of descriptions, documents, media, maybe add something to that list, or to have both. So should we just say documents, media, something else, or should we sort of combine these two lines and leave in the example extensions?
I would rather even extend media and having, for example, for JPEG also added that it's about images and that they are more than just JPEGs. And same for audio, that is not just MP3, but you have OGG files, for example, or for videos, you also have others. So
So you want to include both descriptions like documents and media, and you want to list file types for each.
yeah, but also for media have the subtypes of that is
Okay,
basically media consists of audio, and that way it helps also to clarify the difference to media to a certain degree. And I would maybe make the well, like you did already. Good. Thank you.
audio MP3.
Yeah.
Um, video, AVI, movie, um, can have image. And maybe, well, put in the common types. JPEG, PNG. Anything else?
And others, or something like that. Like we do still want to get into any or all.
Yeah. And also make document singular, because the rest is also singular.
Okay. I mean, technically something like others or et cetera is redundant because we're labeling this line as examples. But if you think that it clarifies it, then
Yeah.
a little redundancy is okay. So if we have the combined example line, then we don't need this, we don't need this. We're leading off with downloadable files, displayed images. Here we're just giving the same list of extensions. Um, Actually, let me move that down the line. And I'd like to fill in something here. Um, and I guess, Ralph, your text is already shortened slightly, the text that's there. Instead of can be configured, make it active, configure. Um, and here, let me just make a suggestion and then we can change it. Same, why am I getting this font size? Same configuration options and also width. I guess we always say height and width, not width and height, or we usually say height and width, height, width, and I guess you don't configure the alt text.
Um,
And
I
also,
just looked it up. You are able to set a default image where you are able to set the alternative text, a default for that, and a default for the title.
okay. And also, um, Maximum.
Image dimensions and minimum.
This is obviously way too long, but I'll just put it in for now. Width. You can put in a default for alt text for.
Yeah, and for the title as well. And you're also able to choose a default image.
Does a file field not give you the option to choose the default file?
1 second. No, you don't have a default there.
Huh.
You have the field storage where you enable display field, upload destination, help text, then required field, allowed file extension, file directory, maximum upload size, but you have no default there.
Okay, so default image. Um, why isn't this wrapping?
1 second, I'll
Search.
change it.
All
I
right,
changed it.
thank you.
Thomas, you raised your hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would pull out the same configuration options and can configure allowed file extensions and put it above the two boxes. And I would say just configure like common configurable, configure common. Uh, I I'm bad at language, but I would pull anything that's common out of the side by side description because the way it is right now, I kept on going back and forth trying to compare the sentences, and it doesn't matter if we repeat the words or we say same configuration options. I go it I have trouble reading a side by side bullet point where it's the same thing in both places, and so I would recommend that we pull common things out and put it above.
Yeah,
Next to
I,
choose an option below, and like somewhere there, I'd put it above the two boxes if it's a common thing, or below with the use media reference fields. But um, yeah,
so I see your point, and certainly repeating stuff between the two is bad, but there are a couple of drawbacks. One is that we already have this text below the options, and it sort of makes the page too busy if we have yet another section. The other drawback is that I think that makes the configuration options too prominent, that we really want to lead with um, downloadable files and displayed images. And making it a bullet point underneath those, I think is a more appropriate level of prominence. And I'm getting a thumbs up from Ralph. Thomas, am I convincing you, or do you still want to push back?
I think the issue is for me, I would move it below. I agree. I think you've made arguments for why it shouldn't be above. I would move it below and just kind of kick the can on we need to fix the text below into some common information for both. But I see Ralph's raised his hand, and I'm not going to push on this. Like you guys disagree, I'll say two beats one. So
Okay. Ralph?
Just one argument. And in general, I agree with Thomas. Keeping those bullet points concise and just pointing out the differences is a good thing. But at the moment, one point against moving things underneath is when I am comparing those two different file types, then I don't consider that additional information if it's in air quotes hidden underneath in that file field is in that help text, which is already way too long. And that way, I'm pretty sure it will not get noticed. So for the time being, as long that the decision isn't made where to place that help text or how to handle media, I would keep it in the bullet points because it would get missed as well underneath from my point of view.
right? And let's also keep in mind the goal is to make a step in the right direction to improve on what's already there.
Yeah.
Um, and we have a little more than 5 minutes left. So let's stick with this organization. Certainly this text is longer than we want. Can we shorten this?
For one, it's sort of redundant. You have default alt text title, and then again default image.
Oh,
Um,
alt text.
and as technically, I would even consider make it the same order that it is on the field settings page. So default the image is first, then comes the alt text, and then the title.
Okay. That's a little bit shorter. That's a good
And
thing. Ah, oh,
and the other detail regards of the wording on the again on the field settings, height and width is used there, but the label calls it image dimensions, and that is sort of clearer.
do you want image dimensions or is just dimensions good enough?
Yeah, image dimensions would be more explicit from my point
Okay.
of view.
But aren't we in the image file? Like this is the image file type. It seems redundant.
That's what I was thinking. That in the context, right, where we're inside this box labeled image, in that context, it seems that dimensions is enough.
Could we just get rid of the image? So just call it max and minimum dimensions, and then in place of same configuration options, and just say additional configurations. I guess you get rid of also as well, but you just say additional configurations, maximum, minimum. Because I think that implies the same thing as what we said. Though configuration is spelled
Oh,
unusual.
Yeah. One question would it make instead of is it period? No, no, it's colon. I always mix those terms up. Instead of the colon, would it make sense additional configuration for maximum and minimum image dimensions, default image, alt text, and title to make it a sort of sentence still?
um,
Because on the rest, except the examples, for examples, we haven't went with something with a colon so far, if I'm not completely mistaken.
yeah, I kind of like the colon as, and again, remember we want consistency, but not so much consistency that we're creating boilerplate text that gets copied over and over.
Yeah,
Um,
true. Okay, it was just a nitpick.
um, can we shorten maximum and minimum to max/min?
Yes, please.
Okay. And I think that's better. And we have just a couple of minutes left. Any last words before we quit for the day?
Um, Conceptually, line 99. Um, are these examples or are these the only options? Like, is this configurable for additional file extensions the way file uploads are, or are these literally the four choices that you are allowed and it's not really configurable?
It is con
I'm pretty sure that there are obscure image types that you could use, and I also think you can allow any file type you want here.
Okay, then that's confusing to me, but cool. This is good enough.
I just looked it up. Oh no. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, you're able to set the allowed file extensions. Per default, you have PNG, GIF, JPEG, JPEG, and WebP. Yeah, there it is.
So there's the default. I don't think it's going to complain about that. So now you can upload a text file into the image field. Um,
Alrighty then. That's good enough for me. You can keep going. Like, doesn't make
okay.
sense, but I got it.
Okay, and we are at the top of the hour. Thanks for joining. We'll continue this either next week or soon. Um, and we just have really a couple more sections to deal with. So an end is in sight.
Thank you, Benji. Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
You too.